Hello, good evening, and thank you for joining us on yet another edition of the program Mountain Echoes. We will be beaming live from DMR TV here in Boya, Cameroon. Now, Mountain Echoes is your current affairs program that brings to you the latest of information, analysis, opinion, and interviews on issues that matter. And talking about issues that matter, we all know this 2025 is an election year. Cameroonians will go to the polls to vote a new president, a president that will carry their dreams and aspirations for the next 7 years. And in the build-up to the momentous occasion that is scheduled anytime in October, politicians have been garnering support using the media and using all other facets in their disposal to see how they can mobilize Cameroonians in their favor. And in the process, there's been concerns over the language that is being used, especially by politicians, but also by the media men and women, because it's been cited and indicated that during this period, lots of disinformation is being peddled across the media space, but most especially hate speech, which of course the use of very hateful language against another, which is already generating a lot of conflict across. Now, the president of the National Communication Council, Joe Chebonken Kalabupse, came on air to indicate, calling on media men and women to be responsible in the discharge of their function and should be able to caution panelists who come and dispute hate language. Well, the same thing has been echoed by the Minister of Communication, this time around not only to the media, but also to politicians and those who use the media either on site or online. And the latest being the Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Otanganji, who on Tuesday, the 4th of March, did indicate that the government is going to take some crackdown measures on those who shall perpetrate hateful language in their mobilization process. Now, tonight's program, we are going to size up the amount of hate that is being spewed online and how much it can have trickle-down effect on the build-up to our living together. But most especially, we're going to see how we can build a political space where it is void of hateful language or information that would not destroy but build Cameroon. After all, it is the only country that we own. So it's going to be an interesting program tonight. We want to welcome you once again, dear viewers. And to talk with us tonight, we have some key persons who live day to day to monitor but also shape society's opinion on issues of this matter. We have a politician, we have a policy maker, and we have an expert who say that a theorist. Now, without much ado, I'm going to be inviting our guest tonight. We have on board tonight Mr. Ebong Fidel. Mr. Ebong Fidel is the regional chief of service in charge of communication with the private media, in fact, the media of the Southwest region in general. That is in the Southwest Regional Delegation of Communication. And we are very honored having a policymaker like himself in the studio. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine. I think it's timely that I'm here today, and I think whatever thing that we're going to discuss here is going to shape the minds of people out there. So I'm very, very okay. And it's a pleasure. Let's see how the program goes on, and for sure, we are going to be sending out some vital information out there to the people in the public, which of course will change one or two things in relation to their behavior.
Right. Thank you so much. And of course, we're excited having you on board because you're going to give us some of those texts that of course govern the media with respect to the ethics and the use of especially language that works with the norms of the profession and of course to the governance structure in the country. Now we also have on board tonight Madam Akomone Adeline Anim. She is a communication strategist. She is a theorist and of course a community builder. We're always excited having her on board because she gives us the theory and the practice in the profession. Thank you very much for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Yannick. It's a pleasure again after a while.
Yes.
And
yes.
a special good evening to all the viewers of Mountain Echoes on DMR I'm sure that with the cream of persons you have here, it's going to be amazing as always.
Yeah, of course. We are very sure that we're going to have a very pleasant time tonight. Now, last but not the least, we have on our panel tonight, we have Mr. Ndifo Richard. He's a political activist, I should say politician, and he is a member, a very frontline member with the Social Democratic Front. And we're very happy to have him because he uses his social media space to campaign for safe space for politics, that is political correctness, which of course falls in line with our theme of this discussion tonight. Thank you very much, Mr. Ndifo.
Thank you so much, Yannick. It's always a pleasure to be on the panel. I'm glad to be here with with my very good friend, and I want to also say good evening to the viewers and to all the panelists here.
Right. Thank you very much. And of course, dear viewers, we're also happy that you are on board. You're staying tuned. And definitely we're going to be expecting your thoughts and opinion on our conversation tonight, which of course we would be sharing with you anytime it arrives here. Well, unfortunately, our legal luminary couldn't make it here for some reason, but I'm sure we can still have this conversation drive to a successful end. All right, now, if you're just tuning in, you're on to Mountain Echoes, and our focus tonight is about using the media space to build and not destroy Cameroon, because there's been great concerns over the use of language on media, and be it on social media or on the mainstream media, there's been some form of hate, if not disinformation, misinformation, libel words, make campaigns, and you say the least. And the government has raised concerns, but also opposition leaders have been talking about it. But who is taking up the mantle to bring up that we should say a renaissance in the minds of those who use the media? That's what we're discussing tonight. Now, to shape our conversation, let me invite Mr. Ebong Fidel, who has been monitoring the media, because his work is to monitor the media and ensure that, especially here in the Southwest region, ensure that they're doing just what government has prescribed in terms of their dissemination of information. But I want you to give us a holistic appreciation of the work of the media so far, and how would you rate the conversations that are going on, and do you think that there is a cause for concern by your own appreciation?
Yeah, thank you again for inviting me out here today. And I really think the media has actually been doing quite a lot in the field. The panelists have also been doing a lot, but when it comes to our focus now, which is the presidentials, because so many people now are taking to media platforms so they can be able to make their voices heard out there. I think there is need for caution, just like the government is trying by every means possible to do some restrictions. Let me call them some restrictions. Normally, whatever measure that the government is taking or that they are coming up with, they are aimed at maintaining the stability of the country. They are aimed at building, not destroying, because peace is inevitable, and peace is something that everybody will want to have. And even as a father or as a mother, if you've seen a situation where there is evidence of peace to be distorted, you must come in to do one or two things. The government is coming in most cases because we have this aspect of misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation, probably we may be looking at it to a little low as compared to disinformation, because disinformation is actually you deliberately sending out misleading information, probably for your self propaganda or something else, and that is where most of the problems that you see the respective government arms that are responsible for to guide communication activities, that's where you see them coming in. There was a scenario of recent with one publishing news agency, one newspaper organization, that they sent out some information and they had to be called to order, because if such an information goes out, of course it's going to create a whole lot of tension, and that peace that we're seeking will be tempered in one way or the other. So the unfortunate thing is that many people are considering government's actions as probably repressional or barbaric, if I should put it that way. But for somebody, even if many people were still put in the place of the government, probably they will still do the same thing. That is just the basic, that's just the truth in it. Now there is always an approach, there's always a way of trying to do one thing without hurting others. But when it actually has to play with you, playing with the minds of people out there, using the media to play with the minds of people out there, there is a problem. And that is where the government keeps hampering. Yeah, we equally still understand the difficulty that people are experiencing. Let me say the opposition they are experiencing. But then I think in anything that we want to do, let us first of all have it at the back of our head that we want our unity, we want our peace not to be distorted.
Right. Thank you very much. I think that is a very good base for us to have this conversation. I'm going to come back to you on some specificities. But now let me bring in Madam Akomone here. You monitor the social media, you monitor the media space. What are some of the specific type of information mismanagement that goes around that you have seen? And to you, what could be the root cause? Why is it growing so fast in the Cameroon media space?
Okay, thank you again. I'd like to commend what the delegate has said. I love the tone of coming with that piece that whether we like it or not, we have Cameroon to build. And the media, in the classification as the fourth estate, has a lot of contribution to make in ensuring that peace is guaranteed. And that's why I think there is a worry, because the media is trying to shift, or is shifting into the hands of mostly citizen journalists with platforms who have the barest knowledge of ethics, media effect, or even the concepts of information disorder or misinformation. And these are people that could be gullible sometimes and easily influenced, especially by politicians and all that. I think that what the National Communication Council is doing is a good stepping in on time, because if things are left in the hands of those who do not even understand gatekeeping, because there is a need for people to understand that the media is a place where people are guided to make informed decisions. And so if it's left in the open like that, without the control and without also the room for maybe government excesses, then we are not going to build the Cameroon that we are looking forward to. And the media has a lot of role to play. Now, as an agent of socialization, building cultures, it is very imperative for people who are into the media, even the social media, the bloggers, to understand that they have Cameroon in their hands. and somehow, because if you are not careful, there could be sparks, distortion that can generate some kind of conflict in the hearts of the people. Now, he has mentioned some of the different fake news outlets or manifestations, such as misinformation and disinformation. I'd just like to add that there is a need for people to understand that on these, there is equally malinformation, and bloggers should be very careful, the bloggers, because malinformation is now publishing something that is true, but that was not meant for public consumption, because people have their privacy, people have information, people have their past, people have information that was not meant for public consumption. And so there could be some aspects of trolling, there could be some aspects of inciting, tailored communication to drive a narrative, which is a more inciting. So I think that there's a need for adequate sensitization, especially from trained media practitioners. I think even now there's no clear dichotomy, because the need for clicks, the need for likes.
Is it even a problem? That's what I'm saying. Is it even a problem of the training? Sometimes it's about who do you know. It's about interest. Interest seems to have superseded even the training, because you find real trained journalists picking up sides because they feel that their interest is secured. And because of this, it turns out to be some kind of what we call yellow journalism, gutter journalism.
And just to say that
it's very rampant now.
There is a kind of a misconception or misunderstanding between the notion of of journalism and activism. That if even the trained journalists are not careful, and the desire to get popular, because with the uses and gratification, more people want the lies, more people are gratified with more people have the hurt in them. We should not forget that, with the different conflicts, the crises, and the voter apathy, and more people, the loss of interest in some people. Those are some of the underlying factors, and some people just want to hear those things. So if bloggers are not careful, they'll be triggering. I take an example. You have now most of the politicians or aspirants they focus on the Anglophone crisis. That's triggering somehow, because with the environment that it has had on people losing. Now when you come, you focus on that as a manifesto first. There is a way that you'll be inciting, because those who are for that notion will be seeing you, no matter if you are not even competent or don't have other things that are relevant. I'll just bring in a few theories, then maybe you pass there is a concept of the duplex of hate, where people hate others who are out of their groups. So you can be hated as an individual for belonging to a group that I'm not part of, or for trying to leave our group. So you see now that just the fact that you want to leave a group, or you're not part of our group, and then such hatred can start coming in. So it's just like a duplex house. There's another reason to be hated for, just for your identity. So if you are not careful to look at bring the tempo of the elections towards the Cameroon concept first, before even being politicians and all that, before even looking at individual identity through parties, then we may be applying such things unconsciously, because those are behavioral patterns.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Akomone, for that. Now, Ms. Anzifo, let me bring you into this conversation. Now, according to the Minister of Territorial Administration, politicians are taking advantage of the very versatile media landscape to be able to bring in their interests in a way that hurt other candidates. And he sent a stern warning and say government is going to have zero tolerance on those who peddle or spew hate online or on air. But again, opposition leaders are also of the opinion that they feel it's not level played, because when it comes to government personnel or government apologists, the government gives a blind eye. But when it comes to opposition leaders or opposition party members, things like that are being looked with a very strict restriction and all of that. So in your own estimation, how do we manage the situation to see that actually we use information to build and not destroy Cameroon like what many are seeming it to be?
Yeah, Yannick, when I want to look at it from the perspective of politics, it is true that we, like she rightly mentioned, that we need some kind of regulation. I differ a bit from the statement he made talking about government excesses being necessary. I don't think that is that is something that should be encouraged in especially a context like ours, where we have a regime that sees any opposition to it as
a threat,
as a threat, and so there is a fine line between government regulations and government censorship. And so you see, the government, like you rightly said, when it is something that is in its favor, it gives a blind eye to it. And when it is something that is a threat to the regime, even if it is not misinformation, even if it is not hate speech per se, because in all of this we need to be able to define clearly what is hate speech and what is misinformation, because without that we might interpret debate, political debate, and disagreement in political debate. We can interpret that as hate speech. We can interpret that as perhaps misinformation. But we need to be very careful to analyze those things within a context and see whether or not those statements and so is actually constitute hate speech. Because what happened in most dictatorial regime is that what they are not very comfortable with, they tag it as hate speech or they tag it as misinformation, and then they clamp down on whoever is perpetrating that. But that notwithstanding, I will not disagree with you that the political field in Cameroon is bedeviled with a lot of misinformation, especially with the emergence of social media. There is a lot of misinformation being spread online, on social media, on Facebook and everywhere. And every single political party is a victim to this kind of misinformation. And while we talk about the opposition versus the government, there is also misinformation between political parties, opposition political parties. There are situations where you find members of the MRC, they may cast out some smear campaigns against the SDF, and they perpetrate it on social media, and it goes wild, and it is, and people start believing in it. And there is something very important that she mentioned that I would like to talk about, because one thing is people tend to like those misinformation when it aligns with their thought. And sometimes they even want to refuse, they even want to fight back that it is not misinformation, even though it is glaringly misinformation. But because it aligns with their thought, maybe because somebody does not like Paul Biya and is hoping that Paul Biya should resign, or that something bad should happen within the government, and then somebody crafts a fake information talking about something terrible going on within the government and send it online. The moment you try to dispel that information, you are looked upon as the bad guy in there, and then they tag you as the sellout. They tag you as a regime agent, or apologist and things like that. And so you see, people are really want to hear those kind of misinformation. I remember in 2017, there was this wild misinformation that went around that UNESCO was going to cancel the academic year, and that the GCE certificate of that year was not going to be recognized. A lot of people received it with belief in it. Why? Because they actually liked it.
It was their interest.
Yes, they actually liked it, and so they believe in the story, and they want it to spread that way. Right now, I want to use the example especially of my party. There is the misinformation going around that the chairman of my party, Honorable Joshua LC, is having contracts with the regime. There is absolutely no evidence to support that, but a lot of people believe in it. They believe in it, and no matter what you do to try to set the record straight, nobody wants to listen. They just believe in it, and you see, even some of us sitting here, what I'm saying they may not be convinced. Like, I don't believe what you're saying is the truth. But I think there are various ways of verifying such information, and I think we need to start having journalists fact check some of these things, where they need to do research, thorough research, to find out if this information is really true. There is something I used to watch on CNN that they call PolitiFact. Politifact.com. You can check that up. What they do is that they check every bit of information that goes out, and they rate it. They rate pants on fire, meaning it is so false that you cannot even think about it. And then some is half truth, where something might be true, but you take it completely out of the context. And so when you take it out of the context, you give a misinformation about it. But when you look at the thing actually happened. But you need to read the context within which it happened to understand why it happened the way it happened. But when you take it away from that context, you now can make you look really bad because of a situation that you were involved in. Yes, you were actually involved in that situation. But if people do not take what happened around the situation around, people may take it out of context. And one last thing, just before you take the mic from me, is the fact that I'm embarrassed that professional journalists and in fact media houses, they are caught in this issue of misinformation, because you find reputable newspapers carrying headlines that are clearly false. You find reputable newspapers who do selective, what I don't know if that's a good term to use, but I call them selective journalism, where if they don't like this particular political party, whatever positive things that happen with that political party, they don't report on. But they make sure that any little negative thing that political party, they capitalize on it, and it becomes the headline of that newspaper. That kind of journalism is, you're trying to, it's kind of smear campaigning.
Yeah. It's very interesting, of course, and definitely that's why we're having this conversation, so that we can strike a perfect balance on how we deal with information, because information by itself, it could build and destroy. It's a weapon on its own. Now, Mr. Ebong, you monitor the media in the Southwest region, and by extension, your ministry monitors the media in Cameroon, online and on air like this and all of that. Bring to us the specific worries of government, because first we heard the National Communication Boss come to talk about this, then your minister talked about it. Now the Minister of Territorial Administration is talking about it. What is the core worry of government, and what has been prescribed to as the way of communicating, such that we don't have what the government does not want? I mean, by the government's own interest, what the government does not want: peddling of hate speech, peddling of disinformation, misinformation, and all of that. So give us some specifics coming from your ministry.
The truth is, some of the difficulties that we find ourselves in, whether at the national level or the regional level, is dealing with a set of professionals that when you go into that professional field, you pick out just a few persons who are really the professionals. I'm talking about the journalists. In the journalism corps, if you ask, for instance, how many journalists do we have in the Southwest, and we tell you that according to our statistics, we have about 300, for instance.
Right.
When you get into the 300, you actually discover that those that are real professionals, they are not up to 150.
Oh my God.
That is indirectly to tell you, let me use the term quack. That's indirectly to tell you that even quacks are in the field. Now journalism has been turned into something that probably, if you can read and you can write and you have a mobile phone, you can take pictures, whatever English you write, it sells. And now with the phenomenon of everybody creating one something online or being a blogger, that is where the difficulty actually is. Because with the online, it's difficult to actually hold this person that you are accountable for this, because very few of them are registered. Very few of them are registered. It's not like in a media structure like this one, that probably we can call you up tomorrow that we have this information coming from this, we want to come in for further verification. Those are the difficulties we are having, and that's why it's common for the stories that people like to make them to proliferate them, if I should put it that way. Because we all have our interests, and so many people know that whether you accept it or not, that Cameroon is bad, that the leaders of the country are bad, that almost everywhere is that, in fact the case is worse. And they'll just want to see something that is weighing down on whosoever is the administrator, and they just take it on. And that's why, as it is being shared online, because with the, let me call it the traditional media, probably the TV, the radio, or the newspapers, you hardly find misleading stories in it. And even if there is a misleading story, most of these do come back with what we call the corrigendo.
The original, yeah.
Yes, to
set the record straight.
To set the record straight. But online, it is a problem. And it is a problem because it's, let me call it a free space. That's where the government is having difficulties. That is where our difficulty is coming in. And like I said before, that I will literally look at misinformation, because misinformation, probably you're sending it out with your intention is not to mislead the public. Probably you're even sending out something that you didn't know that it is wrong. But disinformation is the worst scenario that we are facing, because you are sending out misleading information so that people should turn from what is true and believe your own story. And with the situation in which we are in, I don't know, but then the government keeps coming in. That's why you talk of the NCC. They will come in, the Minister of Communication will come in, and even at some point in time, or at some point, they may be coming in to suppress some persons, or to suppress the political, the opposition parties, not to carry on with their own agenda. And their own agenda may not even be there to mislead the public. That's just the truth about it. It does not mean that because we have opposition parties going to the platform that they are going to spread misinformation, or they are going to spread disinformation. It's not actually
true. Without cutting you, I think that is where I think that our bone of contention is. On a platform like this. We have people of varied opinions come on the platform and want to discuss a subject matter, and definitely the opinion of a regime, let's say regime apologist, or someone who is familiar with affairs of the regime, would definitely be to support the regime, and maybe sometimes to criticize those who criticize the regime.
Of course.
But the opinion of those who don't see the regime's activities as worth talking, critics, would definitely be to criticize the regime, sometimes going even talking about personalities and issues, all of that. But now in the judgment, and it comes to this, how does the government get to judge who is wrong? Who is wrong? Because I give you an example. In January, there was this conversation that went around about the bishops making a statement about the state of the head of the state.
Yes.
And we saw that a spate of newspapers, over 18 or 20 of them, published issues, almost similar headlines against the bishops. Seeing a lot of hateful language and all of that against all the bishops. Yet we really didn't see any concerns raised. But then, if you flip side, you see that there were a lot of concerns raised about those who talk against the government. Now, I'm asking, this question is, how does the government strike the balance of this is hateful, this is not correct? Is it just those who criticize the government, or those who actually do hateful things by every standard, by every interpretation? So how does that balance strike?
Like you just rightly mentioned, I think the problem that we have is so many people are afraid of criticism. I think that is a major concern. It is not like in the situation that probably somebody talks about the government and then, or about a particular administrator, and that administrator takes a step back, reevaluates himself or reevaluates the scenario and know the approach or the next step to take, which will be probably applauded by the general public. The truth is, many people hate criticism, just like I said before. And anything that you are saying that is going to weigh them down, they consider it, they can twist it and give it a different name. And that's where you start hearing the names of probably hate speech or hate language coming in. But whereas probably somebody is telling you what is actually right. Now, like I said before, people are out there, they have their interest, they know what they are looking for. And from the time they don't see what they are looking for, they start considering you as probably siding with a particular set of persons. Now, you like you rightly made mention, the bishops probably did not say what the general public was expecting, because they think that the bishops equally have a voice, or that their voice can make a change. But they are forgetting to know as well that the bishops have their stand. They are not to tell you whether you should go in for probably whether you should go in for another mandate or for you not to go. It's not the decision of the bishops, if I understand it that way. And that I'm sure they reiterated the same thing when they came here.
Exactly.
Voila. So as many people were expecting to hear that from the bishops, and the bishops did not say it for sure, it is not they, or it's not them to decide, they start turning on something else, or they start criticizing. If I should, in fact, it's just the
They
truth.
start twisting narratives.
And probably say the bishops have been bribed or whatever, and so on and so forth. But two, now with the other scenario that we have seen, like Minister of Territorial Administration coming in and saying this should not be discussed, for instance, we equally see to that they have their own point from which they are coming from, or their own angle at which they are coming from. That may be a little difficult for me to be able to justify. But
Okay.
I know that there are some certain things that
You cannot
if
justify
you-
the unjustifiable. Yes.
Okay, it's nice
Yes.
that at least you understand a little.
Yeah, I
from where I'm
understand.
coming
You cannot
from.
justify the unjustifiable.
Okay.
At least it is what it is. Now, I want us to stay around there, because we need to clearly understand what the government calls as misuse of information. I want to ask you this question. Where do we draw the fine line, or the thin line, between free speech and hate speech, what we call disinformation? Because sometimes someone may just be saying, I'm giving my opinion. Why do you call my opinion disinformation or misinformation? It is just my opinion on a certain thing. My opinion mustn't tally with what you want, but it should be able to express what I desire and all of that. That's my free speech, but you will call it hate speech or something of that sort. So where do we draw the line between free speech and some of these misinformation or misuse of information?
Okay, thank you. I want us to know that there is, when it comes to hate speech, it has different dynamics, and it's a social construct. It means that different cultures, different eras give meanings to words and call it either hate speech or not. That was just to talk about what Mr. Ndifo was saying there. Yes. So we need to know. So one of the ways to know is to have a difference. When people are on for a platform like this, or you want to talk about an opinion, so this is my opinion. Most times, panelists with general knowledge on things would want to say things as if they are facts, as if they are data.
Sometimes unverifiable.
Unverifiable. And that's the problem.
All right.
Because for you to understand the social construct in it, it means that the community and the society at that time, in that era, have said that this is what has to happen in the nation. And we have mechanisms that can help that. That's the law, you get, and all those other legal implications that can help guide people. So if I come here, for example, I'm using theories. If I will tell you now that you can be hated for belonging to a party. There is the duplex of hate theory by Eddie Smith. Who says that? It's not me. So you know that this is an empirical stuff. It has gone through the systematic process. So, but now when you come, like what most panelists do, as he said that a lot of times when people can buy telephones, they can have data and all that, they feel like, journalism is becoming the profession that everybody thinks they can just do it, because they don't understand implications, they don't understand media effects over time, and they don't understand valence, that's positive and negative. Most people have not really taken time. They are not professional ethics. Doesn't mean that you're saying your truth. No. There is an intention for your truth. That's malinformation. It's a calculated attempt published at that time. You get. For example, I'm building a career in marriage counseling, right? I'm promoting marriage as a system to raise godly seeds, where there is there is no bitterness or limited bitterness, because children are growing in that friendly environment. Then I have a baby before now. You go and dig up my past and say she's saying this, whereas she had a baby. The fact that I had the baby doesn't stop me from saying or for having picked up a
different
life. You get. So do I have a baby? Yes. But what's the intention? To water down every message and the effect of what I will be saying. That you're bringing in malinformation. It's true. But the calculation and attempt and atmosphere of what you're saying is to water down everything I'm doing.
So somebody will say he who comes with equity should come with clean hands.
Of course. So the fact that I went through it does not stop me from, they said there is a new era. Let this mind that was in Christ be new. The renewing of the mind. That was my first phase. And now I have gone through it. I have picked the lessons, the pinch, and I tell you that the ideal way out is this.
Who says an arm robber cannot be a pastor?
Yeah, but an arm robber should not deny that he was once an arm robber.
So
there is something we call scrutiny.
Yes.
If someone wants to take political position, that person puts himself out there for public scrutiny.
Yes.
And it is just normal
public screening
that people will dig into your past and find out what you did in the past. If you are the guy who used to be an armed robber, who used to steal this, in the context of politics, we don't bring in the Bible in there to say that, oh, I was once this and that is my past.
I've changed.
No, people judge you by your past. People look at your past, they find out the things you do, and there is a potential for you to do the same thing again. So that is where
we had something like this with Donald Trump. People were saying that he was an abuser,
exactly,
of children and all that. But he has a different political agenda now, which even goes contrary to some of those human rights, which are that contrary to maybe some other kind of rights. And we see him being so out about it. So will you want to deny everything he's doing now based on what he did in the past?
Well, look, in the context of US politics, every single politician in the history of US politics has been thoroughly scrutinized. Their background checked, their life, right down to primary school, the things they did in primary school, people who plagiarized in secondary school, those things have come up. Yes, those things have come up. I remember Barack Obama went through a lot because they said he sat in church and nodded his head while his pastor was saying demeaning things about white people. And that one, it had a toll on his campaign. Wow. And he always struggled to capture that. So for Donald Trump is a strange political figure whose past has been dug up, really, but it really didn't affect him. But a lot of people who have run for that office, their past have been, the people dig their past up, and it chased them, it haunted them, and they finally lost the election because of what they did in the past.
Right.
It ought not to be so.
Yeah. Now I want us to understand something. This is the 21st century, and a lot of change. It's unlike in the past where maybe the media was guided or was monopolized by the mainstream, the traditional media, and all the narratives are being tailored by the traditional media and how things should be said. Now the social media has come in, and people now can express their opinion right from their kitchen or their toilet, and all of that. Even in the Western politics, you see a lot of smear campaigns.
Absolutely.
A lot of those things peddle around.
And they did hate speech.
Yes, hate speech and all of that. Everywhere you see it, in German politics, American politics, Canadian politics, all of that. Now Cameroon is trying to sanitize the political landscape in terms of orienting what should be said in the media. Do you think this campaign is anything close to being successful at a time when we have information overload and media availability at our doorstep?
Yeah, you see, the first thing is trust. People do not even trust the government to begin with. And I would say that the effort to sanitize the media landscape is a commendable one. But the problem we have is that people don't trust the government. And so when they come out, people see it as if it's an attempt to stifle free speech. They're trying to stop people from expressing themselves or to say the things that they want to. They feel like they should say it and all of that. But then, with the way the government too is carrying on with this, like we said earlier, makes it extremely difficult for they to even succeed. Because at the same time, at the time they are trying to fight that, there is a misinformation going. For example, if somebody spread hate speech and they go after them, the misinformation again start going around that the government is clamping down on free speech, and people again start buying that other part of the misinformation and that narrative, and it gets very, very difficult. You see, like I said here about the difference between hate speech and you talk about
free speech.
Free speech, or I would like to always compare hate speech and criticism, because there is one thing for me saying that, for over 42 years, this regime has been bedeviled by corruption. It has been bedeviled by inefficiency and all of that. That in no way come close to being hate speech. It doesn't in any way come close to being hate speech. That is just being critical of the regime. My criticism might be objective or subjective, but it doesn't constitute hate speech. Now, if I turn it around again, and then I say, all CPDM militants are thieves. They are, you see, then it now becomes generalization. You now generalize people. You put everybody in the same basket of deplorables and call them derogatory names. It now becomes hate speech. So you see, that is just a clear example of the difference between free speech and criticism, or hate speech and criticism. So we need to really clearly draw a line between these two to know that I am, as a citizen of Cameroon, I have the freedom to hold the government to account. I have the freedom to question certain actions of the government. Though I have to do that with a lot of
Civility.
civility, with a lot of care. But sometimes, you see, people get emotional. People get emotional and they may say some things that may be very harsh on the government, but still it doesn't constitute hate speech. So we need to be very careful, because if we just want to put everything as hate speech, it now stop people from holding the government accountable, and that is how a government transforms into a tyranny. Into
Not everyone can be praise singers.
Yes, and so they just expect that everything that you say about the regime should be singing praises. So it is very okay. For example, me being of the opposition, it is my role as a leader of the opposition to hold the regime accountable, to hold the current government accountable, and to question certain actions that they take, and to inform public about the things that the regime is doing that is not right, as long as it is true, as long as it is not misinformation. I have the right to do that. But now what happened is that when you do that, Atanga Njipo comes out to say that you are promoting hate speech. And they say they're going to clamp down on you, and they send the police behind you. That one now transformed from being a fight against hate speech to being an attempt to stifle free speech. So we really need to put that together. And like I said, all of this goes to even to opposition parties, because sometimes we of the opposition, we don't feel very comfortable when people look at us and say, oh, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, this thing you're doing is not right, and all of that. Those kind of criticism, or maybe, for example, a political party was supposed to do something and they failed to do so, and then people call them out for that, and they get irritated, they get emotional, and they say, oh, that is hate speech. So we need to be clear about that.
Sometimes too, the problem is on what the information you have given, the effect that is probably going to have out there. That is just the major thing I see as the point of intervention.
But
now, it may not be clear, it may not be true, or it may not be okay to take probably the repressive approach that probably is being taken. But like we did say, or like I did say first when I started here, that information that I send out there, it has different interpretations with different people all entirely. And we are looking at the majority for that information not to weigh down or not to create a negative mindset such that a negative attitude will be built, and which is going to destroy probably the peace and security that we are yearning for.
So, Delegate, are you telling me that, for example, a group of armed forces or a group of members of the armed forces, they attack a civilian residential area, shoot and killed hundreds of people, or let me not even say hundreds of people, 2 people, yes, shoot and kill 2 people. Now, I should not call them out on that, because calling them out on that might irritate the public, because that is what they did. They did that, and there is factual evidence suggesting that they did that. Is it okay for me, like an opposition leader, to say that this is wrong? You do not go into a civilian neighborhood and shoot down on armed civilians and kill them. What the government is doing is violating human rights. What the government is doing is causing summary execution. Summary execution and all of that. That would definitely irate people, you know. It is going to definitely make people get angry. It's going to stir up maybe protest and all of that. But how do you conceal something that is the fact?
I understand from the angle at which you're coming from. And what I am trying to say is that Probably the story of Radio Milcolin, the Tutsis and the
Hutus.
Voila.
That was clearly hate
which was clearly hate speech.
That was clearly hate speech.
It started from somewhere, right?
Yes.
Whereas, if, for instance, some measures were taken to halt that, are you sure that massacre would have taken place?
The example you are using there is a very different one, because you see with the history of the Radio Mill Collins thing, a group of people, it's like just sitting and saying that Bamileke people are this kind of people, they're evil people, they're people who need to be cleansed from the face of the earth, they are this kind of people. That could lead to ethnic cleansing.
Which of course we have seen on the media space proponents using tribal slurs. That is those statements that can lead to tribal cleansing.
Yes.
And unfortunately, for some reason, the government tend to give a blind eye
and that is even more dangerous
to some of these things. But when you hear anyone stands on the media and talks about any regime baron negatively, maybe by age or by experience or by activity or achievement, you start seeing the sledgehammer that is going. Delegate, I want you because sometimes people are encouraged to stop doing certain things because they feel that there is some justice around. But if you see somebody doing something and nothing is being done to the person, others pick up and start doing it. I want you to assure Cameroonians, if not, maybe just, is it possible? Is it possible by the originality and without using theory but practice to be able to avoid what we call hate speech in a media space? And is it possible for government to effectively clamp down and have zero tolerance from either side of the divide on anybody using information, misinformation, disinformation, and all of that? Is it possible? Realistically,
if I cannot assure you 100%,
right,
that it is possible, but I know that to a greater extent it can be reduced. And I'm talking about that it can be reduced. It calls for, let me say, us being responsible Cameroonians. Because if I am a responsible Cameroonian, if I am coming on a platform like this, I will say my facts as they are. Verifiable, or that even they ask me the next day, I will tell you that this is what I said.
Right.
This is the background information that I had before I could say this. Now, if somebody comes on air and you make statements that are not verifiable, or that when they ask you, okay, give us the facts that prompted you to say this, and you're unable to do them, or you're unable to present, it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And if probably the government sets in to take measures on you for giving out information that is unverifiable, which is resulting to probably disinformation, people will start crying because they think that the government is always there, just like they used to say that there's freedom of speech, but of press, but yet the government is still running behind people. Just like I'm trying to say, or like I was talking with Mr. before, we know that we have a scenario now in this our own part of the country, which is between the known and the unknown, if I should put it that way. If you go to a media platform like this one and you call the known that they have gone to do something this way which is not good, I say which is not good, now with the notion that people have already against the some of the activities that this set of people have carried out, it can lead to let me call, I don't know whether there's something called silent killing or something related to that. Because now with the crisis that we have, it's like the government is fighting people that they don't know. And in their course of fighting, government too can do some certain things that are in excess. But all of them, sometimes that they have their own justifiable reasons. And on another thing that we need to understand is that the government has all the arms. When I say all the arms, I mean the respective, let me say, institutions that can carry on a particular investigation. That at the end of the day, those people are brought to book. Just like an example of the execution that took place in, I'm sure it was, even not Marwa, then it should be Karwa or something. That, I don't know what is one woman, or I don't know what, 2 or 3 of them, that some uniform, and then they had to at first the government refused. Yes, the government refused because he didn't want it. Probably the way I'm interpreting it, that he didn't want a particular notion to be built around, let me call, the military, that can spark something which will even be much more devastating than what has happened already. But after some time, they took their time, did the investigations, and brought the people to book. That's just what I'm trying to say.
I'm not sure they brought them to book. They announced to us. Well, they announced to us that they brought them to book.
No, they brought. They brought. If they announced, then it's simply for the general public to know that these people that did this, which was wrong, they have investigated and they have brought them, and that is serving as an example to other people that can do something like that again. Now, if we want to be Thomases and we say, okay, we want to see where they brought them to book, that's where the problem will start coming in.
That's hate speech. I'll just come in to say that most times he was mentioning, he was very categorical. It seems like hate speech is when there's a lot of insults. No, hate speech comes with tone, the emotions with which you are giving out an information, and the hasty generalization around it. For example, most of us have been using "people are tired." Not everybody. That's hate speech, because you have generalized everybody and put in. So you are inciting that everybody.
Of course.
That's it. What are the implications of your communication? That people are tired, people don't believe, people don't trust.
But mere generalization, does it rise to the level of hate speech? Just mere generalization.
It does, because it's cultivating in some people. If you are able to communicate rightly, use the appropriate quantity, some people are people of this, identifying those who are part of it, so that you know that when you're doing this or when you're crossing this line, this is what you're doing, this is how you're named. Most times we have portrayed hate speech on the media in hasty generalization. See, someone just say that the people of Southwest, the people of Northwest, the people of Cameroon, it's out like everybody loves Pobia. That's not true. As a leader,
I ask you a question. You say people are tired.
People are tired.
Give us the
statistics
facts or the
of
statistics
the people who are tired,
or the survey that you conducted to come out with this
that people are tired, or people don't trust.
Unable
so
to.
Once you are saying, because there is a cultivation, the media cultivates mindset in people, which bear fruit over time. Once you start saying, somebody listens to us, people are tired, people don't trust the government. Now there is somebody, it's a campaign for people, so for every Cameroonian home and abroad to register for the elections. Now when you say people don't trust, you don't know what you're doing in the minds of. It says some people have. There should be that quantity of communication. That's one of the ways to reduce.
Right. Just sorry for interrupting you, but I feel like generalizations that are just neutral and factual may not automatically rise to the level of hate speech.
That's your feeling.
I think.
You see, we are not even coming to a compromise.
I think that
on the way we look at hate speech and free speech.
Exactly, because
so that's the difficulty. I think even out there.
No, I think that's what we talked about. Opinions. You can see it subtle. You can see it like it doesn't do anything. But do you know how to? Have you had the parameters to measure the reception of information? Because there is reception. When I'm giving out information, you're receiving it based on your environment, your interactionisms, and your symbols, and how things make meanings to you. So if I don't come to a time when I am the communicator, I make you that there's that distinction in your head that though there are some people who think this way, there are others who don't think like that.
I agree with you there. But what my point I'm trying to make here is that if the generalization is not inflammatory and hateful and all that. For example, if I say women are naturally soft-hearted, it's not every woman who is soft-hearted. It's not, but that do not rise to the level of hate speech. That's my point. It does not. That's a generalization I'm making there. It doesn't rise to the level of hate speech. It now become
probably because you are saying something good.
Yes,
you
that
don't
is
know
why
when
I
the
said
twist will
that is
come.
what I was just saying, that
Okay.
when it is neutral
Yes.
and not inflammatory, not hateful, not negative in its term,
Good.
it may not constitute
Sure.
hate speech. So that's why I said we when we just say generalization as a whole just automatically rise to the level of hate speech, it might be misconstrued to think that there is something that we call
Any language you use,
yes. And
that goes to paint somebody bad.
yeah.
Yes,
That is it.
for-
Because
to drive your narrative is
generalization
If
is
it's
a
creating a
common
negative impression,
generalization is a common thing in expression and
Yeah.
in the way we talk and the way we communicate as human beings. Generalization always comes. It sometimes it comes unconsciously, you see, and those generalization may be positive, they may be negative. And that's why I said, if it is positive, we cannot just say because it is generalization.
How many people have the consciousness of the positive aura around it and the negative?
there
So
are.
we are talking about helping on the media. So when panelists start knowing that they need to use some, it's a way to pipe down, because you don't know when, because you feel like you've been doing it in the positive, you will do it in the negative, and subconsciously you're building that.
Okay.
And so platforms, we're doing it, like there's a kind of a teaching that we know that we must get to that level where we quantify maybe ideologies, that some people think this, or you say it, the opposition party doesn't, or you say it's SDF, let it be like this.
it's specific.
Yeah.
Specific.
So when you just say
Don't
people
bundle
don't
anybody.
trust the government, that tone does not mean you're shouting.
Of
That's
course.
it. That's an injection. People
Yes.
don't trust the that.
Even the people that trusted the government will see that they are on the weaker side.
Yeah.
I
Then you
know.
start
They are
having that,
victimized.
yeah, you start doing that spirit of silence.
All
And some
right.
people that will be quiet because it's like, okay, maybe somebody will be like, maybe I've done the research. You see how misleading it is.
Absolutely.
You have done a research and that's your conclusion. Whereas if it doesn't mean that I was shouting. No, I just said people don't trust the government.
Right.
That's an injecting there.
Okay. So we are closing the program at this moment, and relating this all of our conversation with the election, the government is trying to avoid what happened in 2018. You know, parties coming to claim elections, statements that were made that the government failed. It wasn't verified and all of that. And we all saw how it changed the narrative and almost incited people to the streets. So, in conclusion, starting with you, Delegate, how do we manage it? Talk to the press, talk to anchors like myself who will start and have panelists like you. How do I manage information? For instance, there was information overload. You were talking, everyone was talking. Just in case someone was spewing hate, how do I caution them so that such information doesn't constitute a bad omen for the program and also to the public, and to also politicians? How do you caution them so that we can preempt issues of hate speech and dangerous language on the media space?
I think the arm that is taking charge of everything that concerns elections, which is Elecam Cameroon, before elections do take place, they do publish the list of candidates that are vying in for the particular position or positions, and then the electoral list as well, and most importantly, all the polling stations. This is being done so as to make everything available to whosoever wants whatever information you want to cover, whether you are a journalist or you want to observe on your own part or whatever, to carry on. And at the end of every elections, counting is done in a hall before everybody that is there. I am saying all of this just to indicate that there is that need for the journalist or whosoever to be able to take statistics and that are accurate as well. Now, I will not want to say how the statistics are being compiled, but I am saying this such that if you are making a publication or you are coming up with some statements, you should be able to have justifiable reasons or justifiable facts. That is very, very necessary.
Very important.
It's not an aspect that you start hanging on a hearsay. A hearsay in Kope Mwaningova division, it is SDF that one. In Tombel or in Indian, probably when you compile all the hearsays, you finally have the information that in the southwest region, probably it is MRC that one. And when you hear that in southwest region MRC one, in Littoral MRC one, probably in far north, by the time you hear about 5 or 6 MRCs winning in 6 regions, already you know that whether it's up or down, MRC is going to emerge victorious.
It's not even a given.
But whereas they don't have that verifiable information. My problem is focusing on verifiable information. We know to that politicians, everybody will want to do something that will favor himself. Everybody is egoistic. Politicians are the highest people that I can say they are much egoistic.
Right.
Especially, it's like if you have a small dog that is fighting against a lion, you must do everything possible for people to be with you so as to fight the lion.
Right.
But let us try as much as possible to be responsible Cameroonians, to be responsible citizens. If I am sending out information as a press man, let me know that this information is verifiable and can save me tomorrow.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Delegate, for your very firm conversation there, very frank. We're going to take this message shortly, but let me just give your final thoughts before we leave the studio. Yes, usually for you to be able to decipher between to know hate speech, of course, we talking about issues and not about persons. Avoid talking about persons because you fall in the trap of hating them and all of that. So how do we push through this narrative?
I think that there is a need for more media literacy because life is evolving. Some people had trainings in journalism when the online media and all of those things were not there. And so we are seeing almost every media house trying to have that social media presence. And social media has the same or if not more influence on people. The same media influence of the fourth estate, they have it. So there is a need for journalists and the associations to organize literacy programs, election covering, and I commend the different fact checking and all of those things, and let journalists not be partisan.
We always train them. Like now, we always train journalists.
Let them understand that journalism is not activism. If I want to belong to a political party, let me say that this is it. Okay, I'm sure that in Cameroon you can practice a career and still become a politician.
Oh, of course.
So in your now in your media space, for example, I am Annie Makomune on TV, on social media as a person. So if I want to now become maybe a communicator for a political party, my end credit should always show that this is a political thought. I'm representing this political thought, and not just use people just get their social media profile and this and then you just it's not supposed to be like that. We need an adequate media literacy, and people who come to talk on panels like this should practice empathy. The fact that somebody is not in your political party doesn't mean that he's no longer a human being.
Absolutely.
People want to fight and kill themselves on the media. You don't look at what you're cultivating, because at the end of the day, there must be sustainable humanity in whatever we're doing. The next emotions that are built from what we're discussing should be considered. because you want to see at times people do carpet crossing with political parties. So you have already probably done something that has endangered another person. It shouldn't be a political party affair. Like, that's not the most important. The most important thing is a Cameroonian affair. We use these political parties as structures to bring about change, but it shouldn't be the most important thing as far as national life is concerned.
All right, we are really out of time. Please.
Very quickly, let me just say that for two things. First of all, when it comes to hate speech, in a panel like this, I think that journalists should immediately call panelists to order when they start making statements that rise to the level of hate speech.
That's true.
They immediately call them out and tell them, oh no, you don't say that. That is not right. You don't say that here, and we will not tolerate that on this platform.
Right.
And then also when it comes to misinformation, sometimes what I see is that journalists, they know that this information are not verifiable. They know that there are no evidence to justify that, but they just accept it in their panel. When somebody makes such statements, push through with critical questions to get them to prove to you how true that statement is. So you must push that. So that is the role journalists need to be playing. And just one final thought on this issue of bloggers. You see, we've been talking about politics, but there is a phenomenon, especially in Cameroon, where these guys who call themselves bloggers, they get too personal and get into people's private lives, and they make statements about people's private life and expose people, and those things just get away on regularized, or people they don't
check.
Thank you, because the government doesn't see it as really touching them.
Right.
Yes.
But when we see those kind of things,
We are going to have this discussion.
Those kind of things.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Mr.
And just to add this before we go,
we are really out of time.
There is a need
Please.
for people to understand the difference between AI generated in images and information.
That's
I
a
think we
whole
should have
conversation
a
on its own
on
that we have. Please, we are going to do injustice if we don't read these comments. Good evening, GMR TV. There is no way an information can be managed again with corrupt officials. I don't know the kind of information that can help to build Cameroon. Look at only Elekam. There's always a saying that you cannot organize something and lose it. Tell me, how can this build our country? Okay, it's coming from Kemonka Clovis from Douala. Thank you very much. And okay, this other one that just said, good evening, GMR TV. Great discussion there. All right, thank you so much. And I think that it is here we're going to place a cap on our program tonight. Many thanks for watching. I want to thank Mr. Ebon Fidel, who is the regional chief in charge of media in the Southwest Regional Delegation of Communication. We also have with us Madam Akomone Adeline Anim, who is a media strategist and theorist. And last but not the least, Mr. Ndifo Richard, who is a politician militating with the Social Democratic Front. My name is Yannick Fonki. Special thanks to JC Agum and Brother Tassang for manning the broadcasting and transmission. We'll be again on Monday. Good night.